these ideas out there. So I guess first, I'd just like to say welcome to the series. Um, you know, like I guess probably the first step is like what am I doing here? If you saw my last video, I've been fooling around with the technology. And I don't like my indoor recording area. I really like how I did my last sort of series where I sort of did it out here and with the garden in the background. And as time went by, you got to watch the garden grow as well as you were, sort of listen and learn a little bit about the biology and neurobiology of metacognition. Excuse me. So I kind of want to do something similar to that, but doing a live stream with sort of a naturalistic background runs into its own sort of complications. Last time I just didn't have, I guess, the bandwidth. And so if I have any problem with the bandwidth, I will probably adjust that and maybe move to another location because there is an other problem that we have here, which is it's kind of been overcast, which I thought made this a perfect day to sort of do it. But I'm hoping that the rain will actually sort of hold off a little bit here, which is a bummer because I've been actually praying for the rain for the last several weeks. I don't know what's going on where you are, but where we are, we need rain. It has been really, really, really dry. So, this actual rain has been nice, but, it might be one of those unintended uh, snafus that might come with trying to do a live stream in an outdoor environment like this. The other one is hopefully that this microphone here is providing you a clear version of my voice. If it's not, please drop something in the chat so that I can be kind of aware of it. I'll try to use something else or do something a little different. Everything checked out before I came here. But I really want the garden in the background just on a metaphorical note, because I really believe that that reflects what I'm actually trying to do here. Our education system right now is it's struggling, and it's struggling at a very fundamental level, um, because we've sort of missed, this that part of learning is growth and development. In fact, my belief is that growth and development, okay, restoration, okay, they are all part of this same concept, which is fundamental to learning. And so having sort of a growing background, I think is a real natural background. I think really ties in very well with what we're trying to do here. Our education system, was built to address the societal needs of educated individuals and not address the needs of individuals to become educated, and so I believe we can turn this around tomorrow if we can just get people starting to think a little bit more about how learning actually naturally works, in building on that, and in metacognition is a big part of that, and that is a big piece of what I'm pushing. And so if you do follow me, and you might find it, it's like feast or famine when I get time to make um videos and write things, and like I usually just bomb people with it, and then radio silence for a little while, and then I'm sure that will continue, but for right now I'm moving into the summer hoping to have a lot more time to like kind of work on these projects. And I believe this is really important because one of the other things I'm doing is trying to get the word out there that if we could just start getting people to appreciate the natural way that humans learn, we can start turning the tide tomorrow. That's why, if you're a teacher, okay, then like reach out to me or go to my website. I've got it fairly clearly delineated there, that I'm working. Come and work with me. I will kind of show you how you can teach students in your classroom how to be metacognitive mentors to the other students in the classroom, which will completely change both your capacity to deal with, you know, the teaching demands that are really becoming heavier and heavier every single year, but it also will change the culture of your classroom, and it'll really help you build those regulation skills that all of your other teaching is built upon. If you're a director or an administrator, please reach out. I am actively in a process of looking for administrators in schools that would be willing to put in place a program that I've developed that will get every single incoming freshman into your institution a metacognitive problem solving mentor, and get every sophomore a real authentic leadership experience. The research on these is so strong, and I'm very excited to be able to offer that. If you're an individual, I should probably, I guess, mention my whole shtick. If you're an individual, okay, with neurodiversity, and you want to learn more about your learning rather than just what is going on with your diagnosis, you're ready to move beyond the diagnosis, call me up. I've been historically, that's really what I do, is sit down with individuals and help them learn about their learning so that they can develop actionable strategies to help them develop the ability to self-author their own life. But today I am here to talk a little bit about metacognition. I'm going to try to keep each of these sort of like wrapped up in sort of a simple bundle of ideas. Please, if you have a question or anything that you're interested in, drop it in the chat or email me later. Your suggestions, your comments will help me think about what I can develop, especially around what people might be interested in engaging with. But for me, I think the science is clear, from personal experience, but also, I've spent the last 10 years of my life really heavily digging into the science behind metacognition. And really, that's what's produced my book. It's what's produced my last paper in Frontiers in Psychology, on the neurological implications of metacognition. But metacognition is difficult to talk about and study because it has this wonderful dual nature to it. You can kind of think about metacognition as if it is a fundamental, or I'll come back to the fundamental thing, but a neurological process that is just built into the way that human beings sort of think about things. Or you can think about metacognition as a learning strategy, like a series of behaviors that you can do to, increase your success. And from my research, the reality is that metacognition is actually a point of integration between these two sorts of things. It is, a spot where our neurological capacity for self-reflection meets our capacity to self-regulate and use what we know to affect our reality, affect our lives, reach and attain success in problem solving. So, it's really both. It's both a neurological, it is the neurological capacity that allows us to develop strategies. And so Flavel was really the first person, I think, that really dialed in on this and kind of gave us this original breakdown of metacognition. It's kind of like you got metacognitive knowledge, you have these different flavors of metacognitive regulation, but really it's these two sort of things that are, sort of working together. And so that approach really led to the development of new teaching strategies, of understanding why certain teaching strategies were working better than others. New approaches. it led to the approach by, sort of one of my big great mentors who I always like to toot there. It was Dr. Gertrude Webb, who just like came up with that sort of first realization that, wait a second, we can take people who have learning disabilities and we can teach them not about what a learning disability is, which is where I think this whole thing kind of jumps the shark. I mean, that's important to know what your learning disability is, understand the definition. Okay. But what you need to know is what your learning disability is. Because I've never met two people who are clones of each other because they had the same learning disability or they had the same, like no two autistic people struggle the same way. Okay, they struggle within certain categorical areas, but once you sort of know what that categorical area is, you'll label it autism. Okay, there is a whole lot of area to dig down on. And this is where metacognition really comes in, because again, it's that integration. If you know where your weaknesses are rearing their ugly head and where your strengths live, where you can actually begin to develop strategies to address them. The exciting part of the neuroplasticity element is that it really sort of suggests that we can really drive that process, not just in a behavioral way, getting people to do the behaviors that are going to functionally make them successful, but also drive the development of the neuroplasticity that is going to help them restore their ability to do these types of tasks that might have been difficult, impossible for them to do a year, 2 years, 5 years ago, into something that is actually attainable for them, that they can actually become highly skilled at, that it suddenly doesn't become an issue anymore because they have the proper understanding about how that processing weakness is affecting their pursuit towards success and towards happiness. So what is occurring, with metacognition, okay, at a very fundamental level, okay, is that integration piece that you can see both in the strategies and the behaviors that a person elicits, but you can also, thanks to Nelson and Naren's sort of that idea of, there's a split between this abstract inward facing consciousness and the subjective outward facing consciousness, and you can drop a person in an MRI tube and give them tasks that literally force them to be subjective for a few minutes, looking at the outside world, figuring out what's going on, and then going inside and being abstract. And you can see on a brain scan where that switch is taking place, what parts of that process are internally done in a, cognitive capacity, and which are sort of in that outwardly directed self-regulatory capacity. That's the kind of integration I'm talking about. It's the integration to make strategies and about our cognitions that we're having about cognitions. So why are we doing this? Okay, why would we have this ability, and why is metacognition really fundamental to this process? Well, if you don't have the ability to reflect back on what has happened to you, not just in sort of a memory state, okay, but in an actual sort of integrative, like, well, what am I about to do way, you can't really address any problems in your life. The ability to address problems really is directly related to your ability to reflect on what those problems are and error correct what is occurring so that those problems are no longer a problem. Now, I believe that this is a many level process. So at the very most fundamental levels, okay, you're going to have the ability to kind of look back on something, okay, and then blindly respond to it. And we see that a lot with sort of like overlearned skills. Take walking, for example. Walking at one time was something that you probably spent a lot of time deeply, reflectively thinking about. How do I hold my body? We often, I don't think many people really remember it, but if you've been a parent and you watch a kid, you literally can see the wheels turning as they're trying to figure out how to manage this walking sort of thing. But eventually, walking becomes so overlearned, okay, through this reflective process that you don't have to really even be aware that there is a reflective process that's actually going on with every single step that you take. And if it doesn't occur with perfect reciprocity between you and the environment, you're probably going to fall on your face. And so, you know, without metacognition, they're just actually, this is also part of the reason why historically I believe memory has always been seen so strongly in the field of education, because memory is important, having that memory. But what we have learned, and a lot of it I think comes from just like playing around with computers and whatnot, but also you can even think about animals or even people, if that memory function, which you can recall, doesn't get integrated into your behavior, then that's not really going to lead to very much of a developmental impact. But the more that you are kind of consciously aware, the more you can kind of use that knowledge and integrate it with your ability to regulate. um so metacognition is uh critically primal to our ability to solve problems. And actually, if you think about problem solving itself, the problems that are most likely to be the ones that jump to the surface first, well, those are going to be the problems not like mechanical problems or math problems or problems that are like external to you. They're going to be the problems that are directly affecting you in the moment. That's what makes it metacognition. We're talking about problem solving your thinking, problem solving your learning, problem solving your situation. Um, and so all other problem solving that you're able to do, I kind of believe, is just a expression of the excess capacity that we have for this. Okay, I mean, and it's kind of amazing how much excess capacity we actually have when you start thinking about it that way. Um, and so, it's interesting. The problem solving process uh, is a process that when you apply metacognition to it, you actually increase the capacity of your ability to problem solve. Like, the better you understand how you're solving a problem, the more efficient you will be at solving that problem. You'll be able to come up with new strategies, new ways of doing it, things that cut out time completely. Or you end up overlearning certain skills that just make it the execution of that learning even more robust. So, if you understand that, then understanding why metacognition and mentorship is so important, especially in this day. Okay, metacognition is freeing up our capacity, but it's not just a simple process of being handed a sheet that says, "Hey, do this simple process." Okay, it's a process of integrating that knowledge of that process with what you're doing. And to do that, you need a person who's going to be willing to interact with you and work through that process. And in this day of automation and like, we run the risk of doing that less and less. But thanks to the advent of AI, if we can actually stop looking at it as this wonderful cure-all for everything and actually look at it as the computer tool that it actually is, okay, that same conversational, what we call in the field of metacognition, the learning conversation, a conversation about learning, your learning, how you're applying it. Well, you can have that same conversation with a chatbot. But if you don't understand how that conversation functions kind of in a meta level, okay, well, then you become captured by that process. Okay. And it's not actually your process per se. Okay. It is a process that, the machine is, especially, what do they call it today? When the machine becomes super suck up, I forget what it's called. That's a really good name. Forgive my dyslexic word recall error right here, but like sycophantic, that's what it is. When the AI becomes really sycophantic, okay, it's not helping you. It's leading you down the primrose, that primrose path, okay, which also is a problem, believe it or not, with some special education teachers, with some parents out there. They don't want to address the issue per se, okay, they're just hoping, okay, it's going great, and that's not really metacognition right there. Inversely, okay, metacognition isn't, like what we've actually historically had to deal with from computers, which is, nope, that's wrong, penalty. All right, like let's the old behavioral sort of, I'm going to give you an adversive every single time you're wrong. Okay, because what ends up happening there is the kid, you shut down. Nobody wants to be like constantly beaten down. Okay, we want somebody to help support us through that connection process. And honestly, the computer ain't there. Okay, the AI is not there. It is a tool that can be used to simulate that process, but really only once you kind of get it. But I'm getting off on this AI sort of thing, and really, I want to just wrap it up with just this basic idea that metacognition is fundamental to learning, because learning is problem solving. And if you are going to problem solve, you need to have a level of self reflection. And the degree to with which you can engage in self reflection without getting distracted, overly emotional, um, you know, injured, there are a lot of things that can kind of slow down your ability to do metacognition. But it's a growing process. As you learn, how to read, you learn newer strategies that can help improve how you read. Even if you become a perfect reader, you suddenly can start breaking your reading down in ways that help you pull out the ideas even better. Okay, connect the ideas with other ideas more deeply. And in all of that, well, on the external side is a behavior. It's something that you're doing. On the internal side, it's a manner of thinking that asks questions, that reflects upon itself, that is looking for better solutions. Okay, so you've got your aspects of critical thinking in there. You've got other aspects of problem solving that have been found, but at the base of it, what is driving that process is that self-reflective integration with behavior. And that's what makes metacognition a fundamental piece of learning, teaching, and education that really, at the end of the day, we need to be doing much, much more of, especially in a modern world that is creating devices that could actually remove that ability, okay, or stand in lieu of that ability, which um, may always be an issue, because we can always even think about like problems that we have had where we relied too heavily on the advice of another person, okay, or we became, what we call learn helpless in the business. You just let the other person build it for you, okay, and that's not how you develop your skills. That's not how you develop, um, self-authorship, which actually will probably be a topic for one of my upcoming live streams. So if you have a comment, if you have a question, if anything here has struck you, please reach out. send me a text or whatever it is, a direct message, an email, or go on my website and try to contact me through there. Um, but I'm hoping that this will start something. And as I do it, you'll get to see my wonderful garden get even richer and more lush because that's what happens with growth and development. It just gets more beautiful, more wonderful, until, of course, you get to that point where everything dies off and, you've gotta restore it, gotta regrow it, okay? Which is where the idea for restorative education really comes from. So thank you for being with me here today, and hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks.